What's going on, fight fans? It's your host Sebastian, and welcome back to the Boxing Tip. Now we got a great weekend ahead of us, a lot of good matchups coming this Saturday, so I'm making my breakdown and prediction videos, particularly for the Showtime card, and that's just today. I got 4 fights that I want to talk about. I'll be doing the HBO card tomorrow, which is the Vargas and Miura fight. They're not fighting each other, but for their fights individually. But we'll go ahead and talk about this fight between current 126-pound IBF champion Lee Selby taking on the number 1 ranked mandatory challenger for the IBF, Jonathan Barros. Now what I'm going to do is talk about each fighter individually and kind of talk about a few things that each fighter should implement in their game plan, or what I feel each fighter should implement in their game plan in order to be successful. So let's go ahead and start off with Lee Selby. Now, Lee Selby is one of the 4 current title holders at 126 pounds. The other title is being Carl Frampton, Oscar Valdez, and Gary Russell Jr. And then you got Abner Mares holding the WBA regular champion, but I don't necessarily count that as being a world title. Now, Lee Selby, he's a very exceptional fighter, very talented fighter. I really like him. He really passes the eye test for me in there. We'll go ahead and talk about a little bit of his physical attributes here. Not a very tall fighter, isn't the most powerful, but lately it seems like his punches are becoming a little bit more thudding. A lot of his decision wins come from early in his career, in the early in his career, the kind of the 4-rounders, the 6-rounders. He's not a knock you out early type of guy, more of a kind of beat you up over a period of time and then eventually get the stoppage. He's also a very quick fighter. He does show some speed. He's not the fastest, obviously, but he does show some speed in the ring. But what I like about him is he is a very technically inclined fighter. One thing I like about him the most is his lateral movement. He is constantly moving side to side. He doesn't back straight out of exchanges. He doesn't come straight forward. He is constantly moving laterally. I like that. And I'm not talking about, doing laps around the ring laterally, but, up close, when he gets into exchanges, he escapes to the, either side. When he gets on his offense, he likes to attack, at an angle, going from either side or punching from either side of his opponent. So that's a very skillful way of boxing, I think. It's never a good idea to be squared up with your opponent at all times. It really puts you at risk. So moving laterally is a good way to press your offense while remaining defensively responsible. It gives you a nice out just in case you need one. Also, what I like about Lee Selby is that he's a very poised and balanced fighter when he punches. He does let those combinations fly, but he remains very balanced and very selective when he's doing it. A very good body puncher. I've been watching a few of his fights. I noticed that he does throw what would seem to be his most powerful shots to the body, which is another very smart thing for a boxer to do. Invest in the body, set your opponent up, for fatigue, tiredness, even possibly for a stoppage in the later portion of the fight. Really takes the power away from your opponents, takes the activity away from your opponents. So it's a very smart tactic by Lee Selby, focusing on throwing big body punches. And I think that's something that he's going to need to do against Jonathan Barros. Barros is a very durable fighter. So focusing to the body will be key for Lee Selby. Lee Selby is also a very good counter puncher as well. He's very quick with his head movement, and he's very intelligent with how he counters. Depending on where he slips a punch, depending on the type of punches that his opponent is throwing, determines the type of counter punch that he's going to throw back. So he's very good at doing that. I've seen him hurt a lot of his opponents from counter punching. So I'm very impressed with Lee Selby's counter punching. He's a very technical fighter. He really passes the eye test for me. And I consider him, a top dog at 126 pounds. Even though he might not be the most well-known champion out of the division, to me, he is one of the top dogs at 126 pounds, and he does pose a problem for anybody at 126 pounds. But focusing on his opponent, Jonathan Barros, he's not the most technically inclined fighter I've seen. There's nothing that he really does that's, extraordinary. A lot of the stuff that he does is, he seems like he's got solid fundamentals, good head movement, good foot movement, a good jab, a decent punch selection, a decent defense, keeps a real tight guard. So Jonathan Barros, I wouldn't consider a pushover, but considering the skill comparison between him and Lee Selby, I think the skill gap is a bit wide. So I think Lee Selby is going to exploit that skill gap and really move around Jonathan Barros, really pick him off in between his punches, break his defense at any opportunity. I think this fight may go the distance. Like I said, Jonathan Barros seems like a very durable opponent, but if Lee Selby invests to that body early on and focuses a lot of his power early on to the body, I think he could set up a possible stoppage for the later portion of the fight. Now, Jonathan Barros, I would like to see him use that jab and really keep using that jab, because it may be able to offset some of the onslaught that Lee Selby, can put on him, if Lee Selby decides to really press the attack on him. So he's going to really need that jab. But at the same time, he needs to be very wary of using that jab, because Lee Selby is a good counter puncher. He is going to be looking to counter that jab. Whether it's with a right hook, a straight left, Lee Selby will be looking to counter his jab. So he needs to be very cautious about when and how he throws that jab. If he's going to throw that jab, he's going to throw it, make it real snappy, bring it right back, just in case there's something coming back at him. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing he can do to offset Lee Selby's offense, or offset his counter punching, and maybe be able to create opportunities to counter punch himself. Jonathan Barros doesn't seem like the best counter puncher in my opinion, but if he can create some opportunities to counter punch, he can really set him off of the jab, really set him up with the jab. Also, with Jonathan Barros, if he fails to offset an onslaught by Lee Selby, and Lee Selby does come forward and starts pressing the attack, if Jonathan Barros decides to exchange with him, Lee Selby, like I said, moves laterally when he punches. So he needs to also move laterally with Lee Selby and try to keep Lee Selby as squared up as possible, even though that will potentially square up Jonathan Barros and expose him to getting hit with some good shots by Lee Selby. I think he needs to take his chances and kind of take that risk and square up Lee Selby as well, or attempt to square up Lee Selby, giving him a better opportunity to get some of his punches off. He's not the most powerful puncher, it seems to be, but if he lands the right one, that's all it could take. Or if he lands a good amount, that's all it could take. So, not saying that Jonathan Barros should be excluded from winning this fight completely. He does stand a chance, obviously, but given the skill set of Lee Selby, I'm not sure how great his chances are. I know it's a chance that he will win, that Jonathan Barros can pull off an upset, but I don't think it's very likely. So that is my pick. I am picking Lee Selby to win. Possibly, I'm more convinced he'll win by a unanimous decision than he will a stoppage, but if a stoppage were to happen, I could see it coming in the later portion of the fight, possibly somewhere, maybe in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th round, maybe, something around there. But let me know what you guys think about this fight, and if you're familiar with both fighters and have some experience watching these guys, let me know what you guys think, how they stack up. Let me know who your winner's gonna be. Also, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your boxing homies, introduce somebody to boxing. We got a lot of great matchups in 2017. I consider this a pretty good matchup, and I'm excited to watch it. So make sure you guys get someone learned up on these two fighters so they don't miss the action coming this Saturday. But that's all I got for you guys on this one. I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.